Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Top Lessons podcast. I am your host, Kathy Inglot, and with me today I have a special guest. For those of you that know him already, his name is Marc Angelos. And for those of you that do not know him just yet, he is a Wall Street guru before the word guru was invented. However, most of you may know him from his content. And the content is the word that has now been obviously very popular, but Marc was ahead of the curve before anyone else. So for those of you that know of Marc, he is now part of a successful brand that he created himself. He is the founder and CEO of Anvictus Communication. He has, for years, been creating his own personal branding, way ahead of anyone that was famous on Instagram or TikTok or any other social platform there is. Welcome to the show, Marc. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Kathy. It's an honor to be here. And those overly kind words, I appreciate.
Oh, please. Kindness is your middle name. So everyone who knows Marc is such a genuine guy. He is not just a guy that sells you something for the sell of it. He is actually genuine in what he not only writes, but his thought process, his strategy. So for those of you that will get to know Marc in this podcast, you will walk away and you will literally reach out to him and his firm and you will say, like, how do I become as successful as you have?
Do I owe you money or something?
I promise, no. I'm just trying to sell the Marc that I know and that has worked for your success all these years. But I just wanted to start off a little bit of background. So you have said that most successful founders struggle to attract customers because they're relying on the company's branding. But your response is, in reality, your personal brand is your biggest business asset.
100%.
Which is 100% what everyone is learning now because of the world of AI and the world of how do I distinguish myself from all the other people that look and talk and smell like me, but they're also using AI. Now, through Anvictus, you have helped founders create their personal brand into growth engines with AI-driven strategy. You call this founder-led marketing. Now, 30 years of Wall Street expertise is behind you, and you have success now on your own. Can you walk through some of the successes that you have had, but also the do's and don'ts of what has led to success for this founder-led marketing?
Sure, I appreciate that. The thing I took most from 30 years in finance, and it was a sales capacity, is the value of personal relationship. And I think what people miss is that it's going to personal relationship, but formed digitally now, which is, we know it as content or personal branding. It's got these fancy terms. But this is back to Dale Carnegie, 1926, win friends, influence people. And so the thing that people haven't realized yet is that the buyer's journey has changed post-COVID. In the old days, it was a whole, the digital marketing guys, which I'm not one of them, or it was the funnel. We're all familiar with the marketing funnel. In the old relationship sales where you and I come from, Kathy, it was get to know the person, do we trust their reputation? That dynamic done digitally now, there's a principle called the Google 7114 principle. And you can Google this. It's the term Google 7114. And what this outlines is how people make considered purchases. A purchase that's considered is a big ticket item, something over $1,000. The reality is people go through 7 hours of content across 11 different touch points on 4 different platforms. On average, people want to see, this is the rabbit hole you go down when you're going to buy something like a car or a vacation. You go do a little research. Well, that terminology of 7114 means if you're in business of any type, podcasting, fintech, finance, whatever, you need to have 7 hours of content, 11 touch points, 4 different platforms, specifically around the leadership. When people invest in a company or a service or a product, they want to know who's behind it. And I think that most of especially in the fintech world, they're just figuring that out. As AI makes push button copying with the easy button, I can just rip your entire code right off of ChatGPT. It now becomes the differentiation is you.
Yeah. No, and I think you do such an amazing job in stressing that point. Any content that you put out on LinkedIn, people read and pay attention to because you're just not fluff. I hate the fluff out there because people will post a quote and get 1,000 likes for the quote. And you're like, I've seen this quote 1,000 times. It's not special. But what you do is so different from what the rest of the stream does. And I think, again, going back to what I call the guru in you, is you were so ahead of that curve from every other firm or every other person out there that now people are like, what is Marc saying? What is Anvictus Communication doing that we should be doing? And how are they being so successful? And what is their strategy of success? You have this amazing background also that we're going to definitely share, because since 2020, you have served executives at big financial giants like UBS, to those of creator content-led organizations like Content Entrepreneurs Expo. You have literally created 3 best-selling authors, and you're currently a ghostwriter for finance and technology CEOs on LinkedIn. That is a lot. and you have done it so well that but most people don't know it's you. It's like literally the secret behind success. And now I'm like, he's the secret. There it is, Marc Angelos himself. So
I reject the term guru because I feel like we're all just learning, but all I'm doing is applying the creator economy principles inside the big world of B2B, right? So the creator folks have known for a long time the differentiating feature is you and your personality. It's why people got behind Mr. Beast, Gary Vaynerchuk. They're famous in their little circle. That's now required, not a nice to have, required for large companies. So when you get to firms like Tesla, that valuation of over $1 trillion is because of Elon Musk. When he leaves, the value of that firm isn't as high. When Steve Jobs in 1997 returned to Apple, they were like losing $1 billion a year. Currently, it's $3 trillion plus valuation. That's in large part because of Steve Jobs' reputation. Yeah. And so there's actually a financial number attached to the value of your firm based off of the personal brand development of the leadership. And I don't think people realize that. All I do is share these concepts. They're new to these folks in the big business world, but the reality is they're time tested.
Yeah, you said such an amazing point that we've said a million times to each other is, the value of the person is what makes the company's foundation. And some people literally hear that, but they're not doing it. They're literally handing it over to AI to say, now you do it. You come back to me with your content and I'll just post it. They're not actually rereading, or as I say now in the world of critical thinking, they're not actually critical thinking to say, is that me? Would I have said that? Would I have done that? Because the AI just spits out the answer for them. And you go, it's good to use AI alongside of your personal brand, but you can't just hand it over and say, AI will do it for me. Can you talk about those lessons and what people have done with AI, that it works and doesn't work in the strategic, business plan?
For context, I come from the AI side of Wall Street trading. So these black box trading softwares that hedge funds used, I would sell that. And before then, I was trading. So I understand the evolution of how AI does the human task better than the human. I've seen this firsthand. And I'm seeing the same dynamic play out in content. The mistake people are making right now is using AI to try to reproduce themselves rather than building real relationships, versus using AI to do the research, contextualization, so you can do outreach personally and build relationships. And I'll give you an example. It sounds a lot of fancy words. AI gets you to third and a half base. To actually get the home plate, you have to have a personal one-on-one trust. That AI doesn't build trust. You can't automate trust building. But what I can do with AI, for example, I can download all my contacts off LinkedIn, upload that into my CRM, cross-reference birthdays, important events, et cetera, and figure out how to surprise and delight my customer by outreaching my 10 best clients with a customized gift. It's their kid's birthday or anniversary, or they won something in high school or college, they were a professional whatever, sports athlete, and I send them a plaque. Sounds cheesy, but the variation of customized marketing outreach where I know you now develops rapport and loyalty. And AI is great for that sort of stuff, the research end of it. What AI sucks at is, hey, dear name, I'd love to show you my stuff, and I think you could, it would help your company, which is what people are doing.
Yeah, and it's, I laugh because there's some people will post their dear so-and-so and they'll forget to change the he to the she or whatever it is. And you literally get these, terrible templates that you go, I'm not special, right? And now you've just burned your bridge because you literally know that the person has put zero thought into rereading what they were writing to you. And now you're just mad. And I have gotten so many of those. And I'm like, look, I understand you're a business and you're trying to make $1, but at the same time, you're going about it the opposite of relationship building. And you're just not putting in the thought and time anymore. So I think for the AI culture, and look, I'm on the board of AI all the way, right? I think AI is going to be so helpful for every industry that we're in. It's just the point of you can't lose critical thinking alongside of it. Critical thinking will be what makes the difference between every successful story, and it will be the difference between your relationship building story and the relationship building of whatever product you're trying to pitch or sell, or even if it's a company that's just using AI to not pitch anything, right? They're building a database using AI. It's like, okay, if you're not going to recheck that database every now and then to ensure that it's actually correct, you're going to lose your AI capability 10 years from now because you're going to have to go back to square one and rebuild everything if you're not having regression tests. For those of you out in finance and technology, regression tests are like so important to every build that you do. But for us, it's more about critical thinking. Again, back to critical thinking. What can go wrong with AI? And in your world, it's what can go right with AI if you use it correctly.
This brings us back to personal brand, because here's where AI is headed in the commercial usage of it. You're going to have, everyone's getting sick of being pounded by the AI outreach. So it's no big deal to build an AI receptor bot to receive those inbound pitches and handle it for me. So we're heading to a world within 2 years where the AI outreach comes and hits your AI receptor, and it never actually gets to you. You don't care. Unless you personally know Kathy or Mark, and then you step in and say, hold on a second, I want to hear from this person. That's personal brand.
For sure. And it's going to be, that secretary in the middle, right? That you say, I blocked you because I don't even know who you are. And the answer is, well, if you took 2 minutes to establish that relationship and followed up on it. I mean, I think the most, kind of metaphoric example I give is the people who need a job and reach out to you only when they need the job, versus the people that stay in touch with you over your lifetime because they actually count on that relationship, right? And you go, that's sales. It's not a sales branding, right? But it's sales in the fact that you're telling the person, you're important to me, I'm going to stay in touch, and I'm going to actually count on our relationship. And when I need you, you may be helpful, but I'm not doing it to be fake, right? I'm doing it for the personal relationship that I think you actually are an asset to me, and I'm going to build that relationship over time. And I think people are literally, especially the younger generation, are going to have a hard time being successful because they're going to rely so heavily on those back and forth AI exchanges that they're not actually thinking about relationships.
Yes. So this is getting at the transactional mindset versus the relationship building mindset. And I agree with you. The people who understand that this is about how can I help you, not vice versa, end up going further and farther.
Yeah. And it's, it could be applied to any industry and any kind of walk of life, right? Relationships at the forefront of civilization have always been, taught that they are important. And the more transactional we become is the more differentiating you will become when you have that expertise in relationship building. Now, you have amazing stories. And
so many. Take your pick.
You have had a lot of very successful people that you can't share working with you. But one of them is a good story that you learned about personal branding with Gary. So if you don't mind sharing that story and how you've learned your lesson through his interaction.
I'll tell you 2 quick anecdotes. In 2017, I lived near the Wine Library, which is where Gary Vaynerchuk was giving a speech. And it was $400 a head to go on a Saturday morning and ask any question you want, 50 people only. So I pay and I go around the room. And when it gets to me, I'm like, Gary, I have no question. I work on Wall Street. I don't even own a business at the time. He's like, why are you here? And I said, just to say thanks for all of the content. I've learned so much from you, and I just wanted to pay back. And I left there that night thinking, why would I pay this guy $400? I don't need to. He didn't know who I was. And I realized now I know it as the law of reciprocity. But when you do for people, even in the digital channels, even when you don't know who they are and they don't know you, they want to repay. They want to find a way to do business with you. And so another quick story is I was working on Wall Street, and I can share this story. Trading Screen reaches out to me at the time, which is a vendor at the time in the fintech space, asked me out to dinner, and I'm expecting an offer, like a job offer. Turns out they want to pick my brain because they've been reading my content and they know that I know a lot about their space, and they are looking to make an executive C-suite hire, and they want my opinion. I'm just an average run-of-the-mill sales guy. But I walked out of there thinking, okay, they view me as an expert consultant now because of my content. So the value of content in creating relationships, context around your expertise, after 2017, I'm like, this is the future. This is where sales and business is headed.
Yeah, and again, 2017, right? You were doing this way ahead of everyone else now. And this is what has established you as, I'm going to keep on calling you guru, but whether you like it or not, we'll fight on that.
Even back then, and I have sympathy for the folks in corporate, it's hard to build a personal brand, and we'll talk about that some other time. But I was on Instagram practicing my chops, just doing live ripping of sales tips on the walk from the subway to the building. So 60 seconds live, today's sales tip, whatever it was. I start getting pounded inbound from people who are like, do you teach classes? Do you train in relationship sales? And I didn't. And I was like, no. But I also realized, oh, you can build a business around this.
Yeah.
And that was in 16. So I was like thinking to myself, okay, I expected the corporate world would just do that because that would make business sense. But that's not what happened.
No. And I think as much as corporate has evolved, it's still not evolved as fast, right? Because one, due to some regulations, obviously. But two, it's also kind of like the slower ship. And individuals have more quicker ways to adapt and transform than most corporations do without, board approval and marketing tactics and all this other stuff. So for a personal person, an individual, you can literally scale up much faster, right? You could see, you can use all these strategies much faster than a large corporation could. However, it is your job to ensure that you're using those strategies optimally, right? You don't want to just use a strategy because it worked for someone else. And I think this is where everyone is kind of saying, and the new hype of AI agents and what they'll be doing for every company and every person going forward is there's now going to be all these companies popping up with AI agent capability. And some will be better than others, but they will be very much a copy paste from each other. And the goal is to ensure that you're using the right agent and you're using the right tactic for what works for your business, not because it worked for your buddy or or the company you just came out of and has been successful for them. So I think there's this, niche now that will develop into what AI agents will be successful and how you should be using them for your own success. Like you said, you can use it for your contacts and their birthdays and what's special about them and creating that optimal database for yourself and your success. But it doesn't mean that the guy next to you should be doing exactly the same thing because he heard it on this podcast. I mean, it is going to be a great success story that if someone says, I used what, Anvictus taught me and it's successful, because that is what is macro for everyone, right? There are macro strategies that will work for a lot, but the micro ones will differentiate your success from those behind you.
Yeah, I'd love to dig into this a little bit. So agentive workflows is what I call this. And the concept of an agent as an employee is really just stringing together of tasks. We're already going down that road. And I support that, right? This is specific to every business. What roles do you need, functionally performed, and where can you swap in AI? This is just how capitalism works. It's cheaper than an employee. However, how do you use these things? I really think that the very first thing I teach my founder clients is the problem, the process, the outcome. What's the problem they solve, the process by which they solve it, and the outcome they get. So many companies just aren't clear on that, number one. So let's call that positioning. After that comes the very specific part of developing the founder's story. This is your mission, your vision, and your values. Why do you do what you do? Where do you see the world headed? And what's important to you that is developed at the end of this is the world I want to see. So folks like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, love him or hate him, Donald Trump, they give you something to hang on to. And so my point is, as a founder, and even just as a line worker, we all need to be doing this because of the AI-able nature of work. You can't compete on labor, but you can separate yourself with your uniqueness. And so how do you do that? Number one, you define your 3 to 5 content pillars. These are going to be the things that you talk about. What are the subjects and topics you stand for? So for me, personal relationship is important. The value of automation in building your business. The value of business in general. So number one, what are your content topics? Number two becomes, what's the best medium for you? Some people are better speakers. Some are great on camera. A lot of the technology folks I work with, you just don't want to put a camera on them. It's just the way it is, but they're very smart people. So maybe a podcast. So you pick your medium. you're building the rabbit hole of 7 hours of content I referenced earlier. And then you do that with a show, a pillar show. It could be a podcast, a YouTube show. It doesn't matter, but something where I can go explore the thinking of the person I'm interested in. You're doing a great job with this, Kathy, right now. Right, Top Lessons, I can get not only the insights from your guests, but your comments and insights around that. And so once I've got that rabbit hole built, there's a whole content repurposing exercise of chopping long form to short form. That's all the AI agents right there.
Yeah. And I think this is, again, you said, the magic words of individuality, but also authenticity, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the goal of personal brand is, how do you come across as authentic? Your, quick and amazing summary that you just mentioned about, the value of what you bring is you cannot be fake, right? People will see through it. They will see through the fluff, as I call it, the moment you start speaking. And if you can't go deep into the conversation, they will know it's fluff. It's AI, again, it's that top surface level of AI that kind of, gives you the fluff. But can you go into the details and the minutia and talk about it? Like, you can tell you know what you're talking about because you just literally summarized your whole business plan within a matter of seconds. And you said, this is the success story. And you can walk through people through your, communication company. But people hear those words and they're like, oh, here's those main points I need. And then they think they have the success plan, but they don't know the details of every one of those bullet points you mentioned.
So people talk about authenticity and what does that word really mean? Here's how I would break that down for folks that are trying to get to their voice, if you will. Number one, what's a controversial take, something you believe to be true that other people would disagree with? And especially on LinkedIn, it's hard to find high-level corporate folks that want to share that, but we all have it.
Yep.
So you've got to be able to go out there and share your opinion, number one. And it's got to be something that not everyone would agree with. This is the old resume builder of like, my biggest weakness is I work too hard. Everyone,
the fluff answer.
Right. The second thing is, who's the enemy in your story? And this means like, what do you stand against? Because this is how you attract an audience. You stand for something. Yeah. I frankly believe that as a founder, the way forward for people, whomever you are, you need to be running some sort of an organization. No, that doesn't mean there'll be no employees. It just means that the way to success, in my opinion, is going to be that you are building something of your own. Now, that's controversial. Yeah. Who's the enemy in that? Call it big corporate, call it big whatever. You're not for everyone, and that is the point.
Yeah. Listening to some of the previous founders that I've had on the show, everyone kind of overlaps with the same, motto, and it's stick to your strategy, right? I think whether you're creating a, private equity firm or a venture capital firm or a communication firm, you're literally strategizing for what works for you. And if you keep on listening to the outside feedback, and sometimes the feedback is so wrong, that you're just going to keep on changing your strategy just to go along with, someone else's strategy. And you go, that's not what works for you, because then you lose your authenticity on that. And what works for someone else may work for them because that's what their best self is, but it's not you. So I always tell people, and everyone kind of goes back to this, and it's so rational. But when you say it and you say it over and over again, people are like, is that you? Is that image or that lesson that you're trying to say you? And I think the reason why I created this podcast is because I know there are so many successful people that are so willing and able to share their success stories. And why should people not want to hear those success stories? I think it's the ability to share what worked for you may also work for them. And that's the overlap concept, right? Like, this is education you don't get in college. You can't buy this education. And in most cases, colleges are going to throw you a book and say, read it, come back and take an exam. And you
How much faster would you have found success on Wall Street had you had a podcast like this back when you were?
Yeah. And you have people who are willing to share their success stories like you. And they're like, look, I've created this. I know what the strategy is. So whether, you sign up for Anvictus or whether you just listen to this podcast, you will learn a lot more than you would in a semester of a class in marketing or sales or whatever the topic of that class will be. And you want to be able to share it, not just because it's, your personal success story, but you wanted to share it because the person behind you may actually do something better, and you're helping success and growth faster. And I always say to people who are, like you said, who's the enemy? The enemy should be who's losing out on making money. And you and I can make money together. No one is in competition with the same strategy. It's right. You could be successful because you have a talent I don't. I could be successful because I have something you don't. And that, the competition among us is a competition for success. Yes, I'm very competitive. I love to win. But that doesn't mean you per se need to lose. It's one helps each other succeed. And the same thing with whether you're creating an agent or whether you're creating the next AI, company or whatever it is that you're creating. It's like you too can be successful. It's just applying it to a way where it's a personal brand and not just a copy paste.
So we both come out of the finance world, and you'll appreciate this. The best deals are always the win-win, right? It's never when someone loses. And speaking of finance, you take a look at, like you mentioned, private equity a second ago. Alex Hormozi, what he's doing right now is essentially building a private equity firm. Acquisition.com buys companies, helps them grow, and he flips them. But he's not from the Wall Street world. Like this is a proof of this model working, where you have a famous media asset, personality-driven company thing that's able to attract better deals, land better talent. Opportunity doors open when they know you before you even meet them.
Yeah.
And so founders, no matter who you are, small, creators, big, the big banks, UBS, and these types of clients of mine, are understanding that there has to be a person at the helm, not a company.
Yeah, and going back to finance, Wall Street pays for people with relationships, right?
Yeah.
They will literally pay someone up a lot of money because they come with a book of relationships. And they will say, well, if you come over from firm X to mine, you're going to bring those relationships with you and we can grow that book bigger here. And you go, well, why is it that all of a sudden, Joe Schmo is getting $10 million? And you go, Joe Schmo has 40 years of Rolodex and he can call up any one of those people and say, I need a favor, or hey, let's do a deal together. And you go, right. Joe Schmo cannot be replicated into a 22-year-old out of college.
Nope.
And this is the difference.
It's the relationship.
Correct. And this is the difference, right? I always say it's the average of successful stories, right? It's the average of like, why is an average CEO successful? Because they're in their late 40s, early 50s, and they have that plethora of Rolodexes and experience, right? I always say you cannot buy experience. You cannot just, maybe one day we'll be able to plug in, a wire into our head and download some amazing knowledge. But until then, it's that you have to do the grunt work. And the grunt work requires saying hello, reaching out, doing that personal call. It's not the, hey, dear so-and-so, how was your day? And the template is literally going to be old news very quickly.
Back in 2016, 17, I was writing a weekly column on LinkedIn around the Wall Street electronic trading thing. And very quickly, I became the top selling salesperson on these floors. And not because I was so great. It was because the clients would read it, want to talk to me. Inevitably, it ends up leading to business. The reality is that was relationship building done digitally. I didn't understand that at the time.
Yeah.
Later on, I was able to codify that, and now I teach it. But I realized at the moment, back then, I was thinking, wow, this thing is working. Let's just do more of it. Today, it's taught, it's content marketing is what we would know it as.
Yeah.
But people aren't recognizing this is not just a strategy. The strategy, when you boil it down, Kathy, is friendship.
Yeah.
Not relationship like business relationship building. Friends, where I call you up off hours and we chit chat. That's the future of business.
For sure. And, this is how we became friends, right? It's like you literally knew about me and we were like, hey, let's chat. And we meshed on the same topics, right? And you go, well, How can I help you and how can you help me? And that's how the relationship started. And the answer is you are not going to get that from a bot. And the bots are going to be great at opening doors and, literally opening the door and serving you your food and giving you your, maybe wish list of items in a store. But you're not going to get that from a bot until maybe, 100 years from now when, we go to another generation of, robotics. But until such time when the Jetsons are fully on board, we're not there yet. And the relationships and the actual, friendships that you mentioned will always be the key to success.
There's an old saying, you may have heard it, but a friend will help you move. A good friend will help you move the body. We're heading to that world where I want to do business with people that I want to choose to give my dollar to. And if you're in business of any type, like you need to give these people that opportunity because of the friendship that you've built. And those who aren't doing it, who are just automating, like we're in a window of time, by the way, this won't be forever. Automation, agentic workflows, these are coming. Within a few years, your window is closed. So we are in my opinion, the personal brand building sprint era for founders.
Yeah. And that is absolutely, I think the summary of it all today is sprint, run. This is, definitely the 10K, not the marathon, because if you're going to stick to the marathon, you're definitely going to lose out on such things as success that the person behind you has already started running. But it also is success that can come with someone's help, like your firm. You don't have to do it alone, right? There's people in firms like yourself and Anvictus who can actually help you with a strategy, with the plan to make it all happen quicker. Like for people who are using AI, maybe AI will give you the right plan and it will be semi-okay, but someone like you with the expertise can come in and say, hold on, these things are where you need to put your thought and your strategy behind before you go off on this tangent and you're going to, miss the sprint. So for those of you out there, if you love what you've heard, like, subscribe, reach out to Anvictus Communication. Marc is there to help you win and succeed. Like we said, it's a win-win for everybody. Reach out to me if you want to collaborate on anything going forward, but also give it a like, give your comments, and Marc and I will try and do this maybe again sometime to go back to those comments and respond to you and your thoughts. Read Marc's LinkedIn posts because he actually does things that most other people don't. He actually puts in strategy and thoughtfulness behind his posts. And he also has his own podcast too, where he and his team sit down and they talk about current events and the current headlines that are out there, which is phenomenal on its own. Because I think you literally break down such topics like, what is Meta's the sunglasses doing, and why is that important to all of us to know what's coming? And you really call out the risks and the positives all at once, which is great. You're not giving a person like, I'm against it or I'm for it, but you're just saying, hey, these are the thoughts behind it. And what should you be thinking about it too? Now, I know you have your personal thoughts on those topics as well. And we do share them, right? Like you said, have a point of view. People like when you hear a point of view and you stick to your guts because that is who you are.
I wanted to share two thoughts that people can take away. Number one, if you're an executive leader in a big company, you should be building out your personal brand around your story. How your thought process as the leader of your organization is the most valuable piece that you can share with your investors, potential customers, et cetera. And if you're a creator, founder of any type, even down to the solopreneur little folks, I think that if you're not with a networking group of community-minded folks like yourself, you're doing yourself a disservice. I don't sell information. The information is free. I almost feel like it's an Alcoholics Anonymous support group for business people. Like there's a need for community because what you're going through and what I'm going through, we can help each other that way through networking. That's the piece I would say people should be looking at. For
sure. And on that note, I can't think of a better topic than to end it here. But
yeah, right.
for those of you that want more, just stay tuned. We're going to do a few more follow-up questions with Marc. But for those of you that need to go, thank you so much for tuning in. And I hope you enjoy the podcast. Like, subscribe, and reach out to me for further collaboration. All the best, guys. Have a great one.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks, Marc. Bye.